Welcome to the Evidential Faith Podcast, where a father-son duo explore the scientific, historical, and philosophical evidence for the God of the Bible. The goal of this podcast is to encourage believers and challenge skeptics to consider the reliability of Jesus in the Bible. Welcome back, podcast listeners, to the third episode of the Evidential Faith Podcast. My name is Jake Nash, and with me, as always, is my dad and my co-host, Troy Nash. Thank you all so much for the love and support on the last two episodes. It's been awesome, and we're so excited to continue going. Before we get started on today's episode, I wanted to mention, because I forgot to mention this the last two episodes, we're trying to get new episodes out every Wednesday. That's our goal. I don't know how often we'll be able to, or for how long we'll keep it up, but we've been doing good so far. So, every Wednesday, unless we say otherwise. Follow us on Instagram as well at Evidential Faith, and on our YouTube channel as well, Evidential Faith. If you just look it up, you'll find it there. So, without further ado, let's get into today's topic, which is the second episode in our Arguments for God series, and that is the fine-tuning argument. So last week we talked about the cosmological argument. This week we're going to talk about something called the fine-tuning argument. So, Dad, you want to take it away and tell us what the fine-tuning argument is?
Yeah. So last week we talked about that the universe had a beginning, and so in this podcast we're going to talk about what our universe is and how it is precisely fine-tuned for the existence of life. And it's called the fine-tuning argument. And the universe has fundamental physical constants and initial conditions that are precisely tuned to allow life, or really anything to exist for that matter. Excuse me. So what is the explanation for this fine-tuning? It can be one of the following three things. It could be necessity, meaning that the constants had to be this way, or the universe wouldn't have formed. Or it could be chance, that we just got lucky, that it just happened that our universe formed in such a miraculous way to support life. Or the third alternative is it could be designed. An intelligent being, God, fine-tuned the universe for life. So we believe that the most likely of these three is design. Therefore, the best explanation for the fine-tuning of the universe is an intelligent designer, God. Okay, so that's what we're going to argue today, and we'll go through several examples of the fine-tuning and just how ridiculously precise these elements have to be, or these constants have to be, in order to support life. So
that's the argument in a nutshell. So let's go ahead and dive in to how finely tuned the universe is. So we're gonna talk about three different of these cosmological constants or anthropic constants in the universe, and then we're gonna list out a whole bunch more because there's hundreds of these, but we're gonna dive into a few of them. So in order to show that the universe has been precisely tuned, we're gonna show these examples, and I'm going to try to give some statistics or analogies for a couple of these so that it makes a little bit more sense, because the odds of these numbers are so astronomically small that it's hard to kind of imagine, after you get to billions and billions and trillions, one part in 10 to the X number of zeros, it's hard to wrap your mind around how big that is. So I'm going to try to give some analogies that are on par with the type of precision that these different forces and constants have. So the first one is the strong nuclear force. And this is basically the force that holds atoms and even smaller particles, the particles that make up atoms, together. And this is one of the three fundamental forces in the standard model of particle physics. So the precision of this force, how finely tuned this force is 1 part in 10 to the 37th power. So that's 1 with 37 zeros after it. If you think like a million has 6 zeros after it. So this is 37 zeros. So a good analogy for how precise this is, astrophysicist Hugh came up with this analogy. And he says, say I cover the entire North American continent with dimes. And on every single one of those dimes, I start stacking more dimes. And I keep stacking until every stack reaches the moon. But that's not enough. So multiply those dimes, all those dimes, by 1,000,000,000. Add 1,000,000,000 more of those stacks. Now, if I marked one of those dimes and I hit it somewhere in the billions of the piles, the odds that a blindfolded person could correctly pick out that marked dime would be 1 part in 10 to the 37th power. That's the same level of precision as the strong nuclear force. If we were off by 1 dime in any direction, in this case, we would not have a universe that supports life. We would not have the tuning precision that would allow a universe capable of creating stable particles, stable atoms, planets, anything. We would not exist if we were 1 dime off in this analogy. And that's incredible.
That's pretty amazing.
So the next one is the mass density. Now, mass density is just the measurement of how much mass there is contained in a given volume. So according to NASA, the mass density of the universe is calculated to be 9.9 times 10 to the negative 30th grams per cubic centimeter, which is equivalent to only about 5.9 protons per cubic centimeter. So there's really not that much mass on average in the entire universe. So the precision of that number, the 9.9 times 10 to the negative 30, the precision, how finely tuned that is 1 part in 10 to the 60th power. So the last one was 1 part in 10 to the 37th. This is almost twice that, 1 part in 10 to the 60th power. So an illustration for this number, how astronomically big this is by John Jefferson Davis. He says, say I hand you a .22 caliber rifle and I load it for you, and then I hold up a 1 inch by 1 inch piece of paper. And I put that piece of paper, that's your target, at the far end of the observable universe. And you stood on the complete other end. If you were able to hit that with the gun, if that was even possible, if the gun didn't have things like gravity pulling the bullet down, the likelihood that you would hit that 1 inch by 1 inch piece of paper and not miss it in an inch in any direction from one side of the universe all the way to the other side of the observable universe is 1 in 10 to the 60th power. And if you're off by 1 inch, it's either too massive and the gravitational force starts to collapse on itself, the entire universe collapses on itself, or it expands too fast and we don't get a universe in the beginning. If you're off by 1 inch on the entire opposite end of the galaxy, not even the galaxy, the universe, sorry. That's how finely tuned it is. And here's the last one. The last one is the gravitational force. Now, the gravitational force between two objects is calculated by one of Newton's equations. I'm not going to go into the equation itself. But in that equation, there is capital G, which is the gravitational constant. And that's a constant that basically sets the ratio between any two massive objects given their radius and given their mass. So that gravitational constant is finely tuned to 1 part in 10 to the 40th. Now, that number is in between the two numbers, so let's give a explanation for it. And this one's cool because it's by a philosopher named Robin Collins, which my mom's name is Robin. That's I had to put it in here. Not the same person. She did not come up with this, but that's crazy. So he says, imagine a tape measure that spans across the entire length of the universe. Now, 1 mark on that tape measure represents this constant. If you were to move that number 1 inch to the right or 1 inch to the left, we would not have a universe that supports life. It would collapse in on itself, or it would go, the expansion would be too great, and the universe itself would not support life. Moving 1 inch in either direction on a tape measure that expands the entire length of the universe.
Or the gravitational force would be either too strong or too weak to
support life. If you move it up, it would be too strong to support life, and if you move it down, it would be too weak to support life.
Yeah.
That's how finely tuned that is.
Yeah. So
those are just 3 options.
Those are just 3 options.
You want to give,
a couple of these were part of the initial formation of the universe as the universe was forming. So after the universe formed, there continue to be more parameters that show that are evidence for that the universe is designed for life. And there are, literally well over 100 of these. I mean, to say 100, that's being very conservative.
Right.
These are all finely tuned, again, to very narrow tolerances. So when we're talking about finely tuned, we're talking about, like, think about engineers who are designing something that has very tight tolerances. These tolerances are, and some of these things, like Jake just mentioned, are just so ridiculously narrow that you can't even move it one way or the other in any amount and life doesn't exist. So here's a few examples of some other ones. The speed at which the universe is expanding, Jake talked about that a little bit. The tilt of the Earth's axis. The speed at which the Earth rotates around its axis. The amount of oxygen in our atmosphere. That one has a little bit of room to play, but not much. The distance the Earth is from the sun. So if we were any closer or any farther away, that would totally affect life on Earth. The size of our moon and its distance from Earth. That also would have impact on tides and other aspects of our life on Earth. The size, the
Yeah.
location, composition, and orbits of all of the planets in our solar system play a crucial role in protecting Earth and stabilizing our orbit. For example, Jupiter. Jupiter is, in mass, larger than all of the other planets in our solar system combined. And that Jupiter does a great job of vacuuming up all of these, or not all of them, but the most of comets and asteroids and other particles that could seriously damage Earth. And it has such a mass to it that it attracts those and keeps us safe.
Mm-hmm.
Something else would be the location of our solar system within the universe. So if our solar system, the sun and all of our planets, were anywhere else in our universe, if it was closer to the center or further away from the center, we would not be able to support life. So a good analogy to think of the universe, I like to think of it as like an exquisitely designed life-giving machine. And each of these 100 plus constants is a dial on that control panel for the machine.
Mm-hmm.
And each dial is set to precisely within very tight tolerances to allow for intelligent life on Earth. So if any one of these dials, not all of them, but if any one of them were changed outside of these tolerances, then life as we know it is gone. And even in some cases, the universe itself would be gone. So,
Yeah.
as we stated previously, there are three possible explanations for these anthropic constants. One is necessity. Some people believe that the anthropic constants and principles that allowed for the formation of the universe and life had to be that way, that there was no other option. They theorize that there is some unknown theory of everything that determines all of these constants necessary, that determine, the place all these constants, some theory of everything, right? So there, first of
Mm-hmm.
all, there is no empirical evidence for this. It is solely a theory.
Yeah.
Theoretically speaking, there's no reason that these constants have to be the way they are. I mean, the universe could have formed and had some other constants. There could, our solar system could have been some other location. It could have been, we wouldn't have had. Of course, wouldn't be our solar system, but the universe could
Right.
have formed with other tolerances. So there's no contradiction in imagining a universe with a stronger gravitational force, for example. It just wouldn't support life. So there could be an
Yeah. Yeah. There's no contradiction in
yeah.
that. It could have it just like you said, it wouldn't have supported life. It's just so the thought that it had to be this
Mm-hmm.
way or the universe itself wouldn't have existed, or there's something outside of it which is like, okay, you're giving us that but you're not giving us God,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. This theory of everything, that this is a necessity for the universe to come into being. It couldn't have done it any other way, is a theory in itself, and theoretically speaking, there's no contradiction in assuming or thinking about a universe with a slightly stronger gravitational force or a slightly less strong mass density. Like there's no that could happen. It just wouldn't support life. So why does it support
Right.
life? You know.
Yeah.
The second one that we stated was by chance. The universe could have just happened by chance, right? We could have just gotten lucky. We just happened to be in a universe that supports life. And And as we've discussed, and I hope that you can see that the astronomical odds of these different anthropic constants show that the precision of the universe is so finely tuned that relying on chance to make a universe that supports life is on par with winning like a cosmic lottery where every single particle in the entire universe gets a ticket and yours happens to be the winner. And that's being conservative. And I just don't have that much faith in chance.
Right.
We don't see that.
Yep.
We don't see that in anywhere else. You know, it's statistically, you're not going to win the Powerball.
Yep.
And you will never ever the chance of winning that cosmological lottery is zero. It cannot be because of chance.
Yep. So the third option is that the universe was designed. And obviously this is what we believe. So we know from our uniform and repeated experiences that when something is designed, we know that there's an intelligent designer responsible for the design. So let's say you're out and you're hiking somewhere up in the mountains and you find a Rolex watch laying on the ground. Is your first instinct to assume that, wow, that the wind and nature made this watch? No, you know from your experience that something that finely crafted and that finely tuned and that finely engineered is a result of an intelligent designer. And that doesn't even, I mean, the precision of a Rolex watch doesn't even come close to comparing to the universe, the precision of the universe. So physicist Paul Davies, in his book, The Cosmic Blueprint, he writes, "The impression of design is overwhelming. The universe must have a purpose." Famous astronomer Sir Fred Hoyle, who is an atheist, says, "There is a coherent plan to the universe, though I don't know what it's a plan for." So he's admitting that there's a plan and that it's designed, but he doesn't know what it's designed for. Well, we do. We know it's designed for life, and it's designed for human intelligent life to be supported on Earth. So we believe that the best explanation for the fine-tuning of the universe is an all-powerful, supremely intelligent designer called God, who designed the universe to support life on Earth. And from Psalms 19, verse 1, says, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork." And his handiwork is an incredible design of the universe. So yes, there are alternatives, explanations that are put forth by atheist scientists, such as the multiverse theory, which really quickly says that, there's an infinite number of universes out there, and that we just happen to get lucky and be on the one that is so finely tuned for life. Well, there's no evidence for other universes, and there's no evidence that there's some universe-making system out there that makes all these new universes. Some of the other theories are, explanations are string theory, quantum cosmology, and there are others. But these are all hypothetical alternatives that don't have much of, if any, supporting evidence to them. But we would still encourage people to look into these alternatives for yourself and, really, really dive into this topic of the fine-tuning of the universe and, decide for yourself. Do you believe it's designed? Or do you believe it just happened by chance or some other theory? So, we will cite some extra references, as we always do, where we pull some of our information, and we would encourage you to take a look at those resources and really do this exploration for yourself. So,
again, because we can't say everything. We try to keep these short. We try to keep them snappy and just give you the facts and let you make your own decision. But we encourage you to look at everything, because I'm not, like we've said in the past, don't take our word for it. We don't want that. We want to give you some resources and what we have found to be convincing evidence, and then you make up your own mind. And I think that the evidence is overwhelming, that there's a creator, that there is a designer, and that there's a God. And but not everybody comes to that conclusion, right? There's obviously some of the smartest people in the world are atheists, and some of the smartest people in the world are Christians or theists. And so everybody comes to a different conclusion. And but I think in our experience, it's overwhelming. And the more you look at these arguments, the cosmological argument and the fine-tuning argument and other arguments that we'll talk about in the future, it becomes more and more of evidence that demands a verdict again.
Yep. So what do you want to talk about next time?
That's a good question. That's a great question.
I'm thinking we kind of continue on this design evidence and maybe talk about DNA.
Yeah. I think we talked. That's a great idea. We talked about the universe in and of itself, but we touched on it a little bit. But the purpose of the universe, I believe, and the Bible says, is to create a heavens and earth that glorifies God, and creatures to glorify God, and that's what we are. Those creatures, and our purpose is to worship God, to love Him, and make Him known. And so there is a design aspect of the entire universe, which we just covered, but even down to there is design in everything, even down to the human body and the single-celled organism. So I think that's a great idea. Next episode, we're going to dive into the design that we can see here on Earth and in our everyday lives and in our bodies. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, awesome. Well, if you made it this far, thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.